Dillinger's attorney is David Hand. These pictures are 15 years later. You can see the resemblance, but they may have built him up a little bit here. And my belief is that this is Robert Mitchum. I know it doesn't look like Robert Mitchum, but I'll show you why I believe it is him. This is Melvin Purvis, again with David Hand, who is an attorney for Dillinger. Here's why I believe he's... This is a picture of Walt Disney, and he's at a lunch table. It's a picnic table. And the photograph said Walt Disney with David Hand. And this man sitting there is Robert Mitchum. I mean, if you've seen enough Robert Mitchum films, you'd recognize him. And there's a couple differences, a couple things missing. The chin is missing, the cleft, but that's added in. And what I suspect happened is somebody came by to take a photo, and somebody must have said to him, because he's David Hand here, you know, do Robert Mitchum. And he gets on those bedroom eyes and the sultry look about him, brings his lips in a little bit, and he becomes Robert Mitchum. And here Walt Disney is looking at him, and Walt Disney's a tremendous, for what he's worth, because we've seen earlier what he really is, but he's able to appreciate that this guy has transformed into Robert Mitchum. David Hand putting up the Robert Mitchum face. Here's Robert Mitchum. They don't say who this guy is in the photo, but that's Slim Pickens, did a lot of westerns, kind of a funny character. So David Hand here is Robert Mitchum. Unless you prove to me otherwise, somebody can look at the ears. The ears look kind of similar here. The cleft chin is missing. So this is not described as Robert Mitchum. It's described as David Hand, but my belief is he played Robert Mitchum. This picture annoyed me to no end because I could not figure out who Louis Paquette was in the center. And I knew it should be easy. I should find this guy in 2 minutes because he's got a remarkably individualistic look to him. So I went to look at the German directors and actors, and I was able to identify F.W. Murnau. I believe he's a director-actor. Here's a picture of him that's pretty close. But this morning, fortunately, I went back to take one last look. I had left this in, and I identified him, and what a find, Rudolph Klein Rogi. And you see him here. Here's a side view, and the hair is a dead giveaway, shape of the face. He's older here. He's aged. He's sagging a little bit. And here it is again. Beautiful shot. The two men are identical. Look at the hair. This man starred in the movie Metropolis, one of the great films of all time. Visually intriguing. He's got the hand here, but this is Rudolph Klein Rogi. And if you have any doubts, because again, he's aged here, we have Fritz Lang sitting back here. The great Fritz Lang, director of Metropolis. There's no accident. They put Fritz Lang behind Rogi here. And here are the three people I have in the photo. I simply don't have the time. You could look at the other characters in Metropolis, and I guess, you know, I'm going to hesitate to guess at these. Well, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to move on. All right. Evelyn Billy Frechette. This is John Dillinger's girlfriend. This is a photo we saw in the Rondo Hatton special and part 4 of Moor Hall Studios. And I showed you that Rondo Hatton was in this photograph. And if you put your finger on the pause button, you can take a second to look for Evelyn Frechette and Rondo Hatton. They're both in this photograph. And we saw earlier, this is Rondo Hatton without his makeup on. This is all prosthetics. But here's Eileen Bonnet, who played Evelyn Billy Frechette, John Dillinger's girlfriend. And, oh, I found something else very, very neat in this photograph. That's Max Schreck. Who's Max Schreck? Max Schreck played Nosferatu. Again, another great silent vampire film. And this is probably Max Schreck's son. Now, you look at these two men, it'll throw you off as the nose, because this is a big protuberant nose here. He had a nose job, is all I can tell you, unless they built that up to be him. But it's the same kind of eyes, the same shape of the forehead. This man is identical. The nose looks like it was trimmed back, looks like a surgical procedure. And this is probably his son. And there's a couple reasons. One, you look, they're standing next to each other. They both have very finely tailored clothes. This is a beautiful suit on him. He's got a vest. Again, beautiful suit, no vest. Same buttons, same color, father and son here. He has the original nose, and he had a nose job. I guess he didn't want to walk around being identified all day. This kid in the middle is probably a friend of Max Schreck's son. I don't think it's another son. I think he looks qualitatively different. Yeah, he's got a suit jacket that's sort of similar, but it's not nearly as expensive. It's not a suit, it's just the jacket. It's rolled up at the sleeves, and he's wearing a pair of tan pants. The jacket only comes up to here. It might have been Max Schreck's jacket. I think this is his Max Schreck's son's friend. And here, just to isolate the two, here you have Max Schreck and Rondo Hatton in the same photograph. This is for the horror fans, just to demonstrate that these two people are in the same photograph. So coming back to John Dillinger, sorry I take a interlude like there because there are still the horror film and other film fans who are watching this, and I would have no other way to get the information out, and it's all very interesting. So here's John Dillinger, and on July 22nd, 1934, Dillinger steps out of the Biograph Theater where he and two girlfriends watched Manhattan Melodrama starring William Powell, Clark Gable, and Myrna Loy, and here they are. Clark Gable, Myrna Loy, William Powell, Cosmopolitan Production, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. So we go to Moor Hall Studios and see if we can identify these people. So this is what it says there, Romance in the Air. You can read that on your own. And there's a man named John Bloss with his future wife, Audrey Garrett, and Fred Shackle. Now, this is not Myrna Loy. I made sure. I looked very hard, but I figured out who it was. But this is definitely William Powell. So the film that John Dillinger gets shot at is actually filmed at Moor Hall Studios. And you can see here again, this is William Horatio Powell. Same hair, slicked back, forehead sloping backwards, same nose, weak features, sad eyes, weak chins, drooping mouth. He's kind of a sad looking fella. And how does this guy become a big actor? Is probably somebody's kid at the theater, in the studio, whatever it is. But here he is, this guy named John Bloss, played William Horatio Powell, and his wife is Diana Lewis, this Powell's wife, and she is a match for Audrey Garrett here. So we have Fred Shackle sitting over here. And Fred Shackle appears to be Clark Gable. Clark Gable's a pretty big star, and you have to realize that I identified in a couple other films, other film stars, mostly from other studios, from Gone with the Wind and other places. But here I have William Powell, Diana Lewis, and I believe this is a pretty good match for Clark Gable. Obviously much younger here, and they have to slick down his hair. But you have the same kind of cut in the hair. The ear is not so far off. And again, they are in the same photograph together, and they run together. So Myrna Loy, Manhattan Melodrama, where the movie Dillinger saw when he got shot. It's great advertising for the movie. Probably sold 10 million more tickets. But Myrna Loy also plays in the Dillinger shooting hoax as the woman in red, Anna Campagnas, or Anna Sage, and an Austro-Hungarian-born Romanian prostitute and brothel owner, best known for assisting the FBI in tracking down John Dillinger. Well, they're all in on the hoax. They're all part of the hoax. And you can see the deliciously flaring nostrils here, over here, the same eyebrows, same basic shape, though they may have built it out here for the woman in red. And we look through the Moor Studios photographs, and you remember here Liz Ludlow, Roseanne Purvis, here's Boris Karloff, Robert Siamak. Here she is. Now, plain Jane here, but they can build anybody up and make them look like stars. I mean, look at Betty Davis. And how the heck did she become such a giant star? Because they do makeup, they glamorize, they use all sorts of angles and whatnot. But this is Myrna Loy, and you can see the resemblance, and she played the woman in red. Oh, yeah, this woman standing next over here is one of two people. This is either Maureen O'Sullivan or Maureen O'Sullivan's daughter. So, I could have just left it alone and said, oh, look, you're Maureen O'Sullivan. But the problem was that standing behind her is a woman wearing a virtually identical coat. It's a very finely tailored coat, very, very expensive. And these are either identical or very, very close. And so I had to say, well, this is probably her mother. This is definitely her mother, this girl's mother. But you're left with a problem that I can't find a single picture of Maureen O'Sullivan's mother, whose name is Mary Lovett O'Sullivan. And when I got some older pictures where Maureen O'Sullivan had aged a little bit, I'm left with a older Maureen O'Sullivan who looks like the mother. And I spent a little time trying to get the dates down a little better and when the movies were done, and tell you at this point I just don't have the time to nail it down. So what you have here is mother and daughter. One of them is Maureen O'Sullivan, the other is either the daughter or the mother. So you can work on it on your own time, but I nailed one of them. All right, so this is a photo from Moor Studios, and again, I'm away from the Dillinger stuff, but it all comes around again. And here's Caught on the Cookham Bridge, spanning the Thames, Roy Turk and Cab Smith. Roy Turk, Cab Smith. And I had gone looking for the guy who is Cab Smith for a long time and finally realized that this was him, and he is Charles Laughton. And I knew I'd eventually run into him. Charles Laughton, a pretty big star. Roy Turk is probably director Frank Lloyd. Right. And if you look at Charles Laughton, and it says his wife is Elsa Lanchester. Elsa Lanchester played the Bride of Frankenstein. One of the great finds here was finding Joe Lancaster, who played Elsa Lanchester. This is from Moor Studios, these two photos. And here's Boris Karloff, as we saw earlier. So that makes the Bride of Frankenstein also the bride of Charles Laughton, makes her Joe Lancaster from Moor Studios. Peter Dards sitting here is the father of Joe Lancaster, who also goes by the name Joe Dards. And he is therefore the father of Elsa Lanchester. He's also Basil Rathbone, and makes him the father-in-law of Charles Laughton. So it's complicated, but Peter Dards is Basil Rathbone, and he is the father-in-law of Charles Laughton.